Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. There's a lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you.
Koinant, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's live stream. Now, tonight I've got Ricardo Marmon joining us. Ricardo heads up the new Republican Party in South Africa. Tonight we will be discussing the crisis in South Africa, looking at various aspects of this crisis from different angles and unpacking it. Please remember to subscribe to Loving Life to be kept informed and post your questions in the side chat. Let me get Ricardo on. Hi, Ricardo.
Good evening, Scott. How are you doing?
Excellent, thank you. Excellent. I can't see you at the moment. I just see the little icon.
Let me just see. Is that better?
Yeah, there you go. Much better. Perfect.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So how you been keeping, Ricardo?
I've been well. Thanks a lot for giving me the opportunity again. And hi to all your viewers as well.
Fantastic.
How have you been keeping?
I've been well. I've been good. Now, Ricardo, tonight we're going to be talking about the crisis in South Africa. Basically, there are crises in all sorts of areas, and you've got an incompetent ANC government who couldn't hold a barbecue in a park running the show. So, you know, it's not going to get any better. What I'd like to do tonight with you is unpack those various aspects of the crisis, starting with the financial crisis. Tell us about the financial crisis that's happening in South Africa. And just before you do, we're going to be having in the next few days one of the shareholders in the South African Reserve Bank, Michael Deere, joining us on the live stream. And he's going to be talking to us about the central bank system and also about the Bank of International Settlements, how all this works, how this hierarchy that basically runs the financial world works. But let's get back to South Africa. Okay, so South Africa is in a financial crisis. Why? What's happening there?
Look, we're in a financial crisis for a number of reasons. You know, many of them starts with the constitution. So basically, the first reason why we're in a crisis is because of bad management of our public finances. The ANC has had no restriction whatsoever on how they can tax South African citizens, how they can spend our money, etc. So poor management of our finances. And secondly, we are in crisis because financial crisis because we have an enormous amount of debt that we owe, both to financiers in South Africa and financiers internationally. And then, of course, coupled with both that mismanagement of our public finances, the unbelievable debt that we have in the international world, we also have corruption that is running rampant. And there's money just flowing out of the state treasury. So I think those are probably, in my view, the biggest reasons why we are in this crisis. And of course, Ramaphosa's decision to lock down the South African economy was just a cherry on top, I guess.
Right. And there's a couple of other things I'd like to talk to you about in this particular area. Firstly, the nationalizing of the South African Reserve Bank. How is that going to help this crisis?
I don't think much, to be honest with you. Obviously, when you're speaking about the nationalization of the Reserve Bank, I guess you're referring to the current talk that is going on and
yes.
what the EFF is proposing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, personally, I don't think much because what they are saying is they want to just restrict, obviously move the South African Reserve Bank from having private shareholders to now having the government, the ANC is now the only shareholder. So that's the change they want to do. And then they want the finance minister to appoint auditors and that sort of thing. Look, I think those are cosmetic changes. I don't think it's going to do much. I think all that is aimed at doing is to shut people like myself up, that is saying that our Reserve Bank is beholden to an international central banking system and not to this country. That our Reserve Bank is part of a system that is indebting our country. That our Reserve Bank is creating money out of nothing, and that is a problem. None of these things you will find being addressed in what the EFF is proposing. So, and unless you address these things, you're not making any real changes, to be honest with you.
Right. Well, didn't Zimbabwe nationalize their central bank, and didn't the Zimbabwe dollar shortly thereafter crash to absolutely no value?
Of course, you see, the thing is, if you do these kind of changes that the EFF proposes, and you don't have the buy-in of the guys who really run the South African Reserve Bank, the international central banking cartel, if you don't have their buy-in, and you don't fundamentally change how the currency is structured and how it works, they will collapse it 100%. So if they are not behind this nationalization, then you can bet a lot of money on it. They will collapse the rand. Simple as that.
Right. And talking about an associated issue, earlier this week it was suggested that Ace Magashule, there was an arrest warrant out for him, and I've actually seen a copy of that document, which I'll be posting later tonight in a video, where the head of the DPP actually does authorize that Ace Magashule is arrested, and he was supposed to apparently appear in court on Friday. What's the latest developments there? Have you heard?
No, I haven't. I think I know as much as you do that he's going to appear in court on Friday. I don't know much about it in terms of the detail. What I've heard he's been charged in relating to that farm, the dairy farm issue, the tendering that's going on there. I've heard the ANC saying, obviously, they are not going to let him step down. So that speaks to Ramaphosa's control over the ANC and his seriousness about fighting corruption. I mean, they said many years ago and several times that if you are charged and you are a senior member of the ANC and the NEC, that you should step aside. And that should be the right thing to do, but none of that is being done. And it seems that there's going to be protests and the ANC, some supporting Magashule, etc. But the detail, other than that, that's all I know, to be honest with you, just as much as you do, I guess.
Right. Well, I find it extraordinary that, you know, when you consider what a big hole South Africa is in, that these guys get away with what they get away with. It's absolutely crazy. Now let's move on move on through the crises that South Africa faces. South Africa is also in an economic crisis. Tell us how bad that is and why that is.
Look, we're in an economic crisis. To show you how bad it is, we're sitting at about 42% unemployment here. And as you know how they calculate this, I mean, they leave out a lot of the people who have given up hope of looking for work. So I would say that our unemployment is probably sitting much higher than that, probably 50, 60 if I could guess. but it's very bad. So that is an indication of the shape of our economy. And as you can imagine, this lockdown measures that they've put in place, many businesses have closed down. I can't see them coming back. And there's some that are, just barely holding on to life. And I think they will also be going soon. And if you look at Ramaphosa's recovery plan, I don't think you can call it that. It's pathetic. And I don't think it will result in any growth in our economy. So our economy has collapsed, and I think our economy is just going to go worse and worse. And it'll be very difficult for anybody to save it if we don't do something soon. Now, the reason why it's in this crisis is because, look, our economy has never been well functioning. From the past, South Africa's economy was built on exploitation. South Africa's economy, our resources were supposed to feed the rest of the world, and we're just a feeder economy. That's how it was supposed to be. Those ones who are running the world, they come here to exploit as much as they can. Those things have never changed. South Africa's economy was never fully industrialized, even though we have such a wealth of natural resources. The economy was never really balanced out, turned into a well-functioning economy. There's all the potential to do that. So the ANC's never done that for years, and that's why our economy was already on the brink, to be honest with you. And Ramaphosa has just delivered us the killer blow with the lockdown. So that's why we are in this crisis. And the crisis is very bad and getting worse every day.
Well, I just want to add to the unemployment situation. I actually took some notes, and this is from an article. They say the unemployment crisis in South Africa, according to the expanded definition, has increased by 7.5 percentage points to 43.1% in the third quarter of 2020, compared to the second quarter of the year, according to the results of the Quarterly Labour Force Survey, or QLFS, issued by Stats SA on Thursday. Now, it's interesting because Stats SA said in 1994 that the unemployment rate was 20%. So if you consider the country that Ramaphosa and the ANC were given, they have completely trashed it, haven't they?
Look, they have. But I think it was always the plan. I think even, to be honest with you, you are very well informed on these issues. So it was always the plan, even before 1994, to eventually collapse South Africa. And that's where we are steering towards. But yes, you're right. The ANC inherited an economy with a lot of potential. It wasn't perfect, let's be honest, but it had a lot of potential. And if they were serious and they built the right foundations and built on from that, we would have had probably one of the most powerful, fully industrialized economies of the world today. Every single reason why our economy should flourish. We have a young population. We've got a lot of natural resources. We've got good access to sea routes, etc. Every reason why our economy should have flourished. So yes, they had a good deck and they messed it up.
Yeah. Well, Ramaphosa is known to blame apartheid for all his ills today, 26 years later. But now he's got a new hobby horse. He can go and blame the coronavirus, can't he, and the lockdown. Of course, it wasn't his fault. Now, I want to go back to 1994. I've quoted the unemployment figures in 1994 and what they are today, and they're more than doubled, and a large percentage of that, 43%, as you say, it's much higher in reality, is the white population who've been completely pushed out of the employment area by BEE. Do you think that's a compounding factor in what is happening in South Africa when it comes to the economy?
Yes, of course. I think that is a factor there. There has been a concerted effort to impoverish, our white compatriots here. So definitely, look, that's the plan. You must understand the economic plan for South Africa, or the way South Africa has functioned economically since we've had the New World Order here at our shores, has been to make sure that the vast majority of South Africans are dislocated, impoverished. And so what they do is, what you see here is that there's a small elite that is constant. There's a constant elite that is running our economy right at the top. Right. They don't change. If you look at the history books, they don't change very much. And then you have a middle class. Now that middle class, it also has to stay steady in terms of the numbers of them, or the ratio. And then you have at the bottom, which should be the vast majority of South Africans who are poor. And what you've seen now since 1994 is that a lot of our white compatriots who used to be in that middle class zone, because of BEE, EE, etc., they've just been kicked out of that zone, kicked downwards, if you like. And there's been a few of our black compatriots that have filled the ranks in that small middle class. But the overall structure of the economy hasn't changed, maybe even gotten a little bit worse, to be honest.
Right. Now, just last week, the Eurozone business chiefs warned Ramaphosa that BBBEE was actually stopping businesses from Europe investing in South Africa, because they said that they couldn't set up a business in South Africa with the current conditions related to BBBEE and doing business in South Africa. Now, the Eurozone is, the European zone is our biggest trading partner, or South Africa's biggest trading partner. And they've got something like 40% of the investment that's been made from external sources in South Africa. If they leave South Africa, how is that going to impact the country?
Look, I think it would be disastrous for the country. And look, it's a positive thing that they criticize that, because obviously, if you look at the BEE policy, it's hiding behind the fact that it was supposed to address the economic imbalance that South Africa had to ensure the economy becomes well-functioning. But in reality, that's not what it has done. It has not really reduced poverty amongst black people in South Africa, and it has increased poverty amongst white people in South Africa. And it's just created this more immoral tinge of our economy. You know, it's so yes, if they leave and they stop doing business with South Africa, it would be disastrous to the country.
Right. Well, really what it's done is it's enriched the black elite, because these businesses have to sell over 50% of their shares to a black partner who's always one of the well-connected ANC guys. And I learned just a short while ago that how this transfer of shares happens is quite extraordinary. What happens is that the new owner of the block of shares doesn't pay a cent himself. He actually gets a loan from a bank, or there's one special bank that gives out these loans. And the company that he's a shareholder in actually pays the interest on those shares. He doesn't pay a cent. He just becomes the beneficiary. And this is how Ramaphosa has become a billionaire, because he has been the recipient of so many BBBEE deals because of his position and his influence. And as you say, the average African in the township gets nothing. In fact, he gets less than nothing. He goes backwards. Now, let's just move on. Okay. Once South Africa has been economically ruined, do you think that'll open the door for socialism when South Africa becomes like Zimbabwe?
Look, Scott, I think that question is being answered for us as we speak. You know, I think we are living in a socialist, communist state now at the moment. You know, so I think that's the ideal. I just want to make one thing clear: that South Africa cannot, in real terms, be impoverished. You know, South Africa has got a wealth of natural, so they will impoverish us financially, and that's what the ANC wants to do. The reason why they are after South Africa at this stage to increase unemployment and to devalue the rand and all these things that they are doing is to then get hold of to cheapen South Africa's very valuable assets. South Africa's got good natural resources, but if we are financially poor, then someone can just exploit that much better. You know,
like China.
We've got good land, exactly. So the gold, we've got gold under our ground. We've got many mineral resources that everybody needs. The reason why many of these other economies are so rich is because of us. But these guys are greedy. At the moment, they are paying South Africa not even a fair amount for this. But if they get us financially in a very bad situation, they can get this for next to nothing. You know, I mean, look at what's happening in Zimbabwe at the moment. Zimbabwe is a very rich country. People don't realize that. But at the moment, before they used to go to Zimbabwe, buy the gold at very cheap prices, pay some tax, etc. now they can just smuggle it out of the country. And so they don't have to pay nothing to no one. And so I think that's what's going to happen in South Africa. We are going to be in a communist state. The other resource we have, very valuable resource, the most valuable resource, is our youth, young people in this country. We're one of the youngest populations in the world. And those young people, if we are not careful, they're going to be slave labor in a communist system. And our natural resources is going to be just siphoned out for next to nothing. We're getting next to nothing already, but it will be even worse.
Yeah, well, look, we'll get to the New World Order later, because I think we need to look at what's going to happen in the future. And basically what you've just said now is what the New World Order is all about. I just want to, where is my comment thought here? Yeah, I just want to touch on the Chinese, okay, who live in South Africa. They are honorary blacks, which means that they, with BEE, they are seen as black. Now, the Chinese have been in the country, most of them, for less than a generation. The white population has been in there for hundreds of years, and their ancestry goes way back. You know, this is clearly persecuting not only the white population, but the colored population and the Indian population. How do we get rid of that persecution?
We have to change government, unfortunately, Scott. I think that's where we have to go. And look, we have to dig up some of these immoral laws and things that they've put in place. Look, the big threat here, Scott, is that whatever you want to look at our past is, but the white population in this country, they've accumulated a lot of skill. They have a lot of know-how. They've been at quite good relationships in the past, unfortunately, with the same people that are now manipulating the ANC. And so what the danger is, you do not want to combine black and white in this country.
Right.
Because if you do that, you have a lot of skill that has been acquired. I mean, South Africa was on the cutting edge of many of the research, that kind of stuff that the West were doing. And now you have a very young and robust population, a population that has a lot of creativity, capacity to learn, and that is, in the black community, and our natural resources. So if you bring that together, it will be unbelievable. So what you have to do is you have to marginalize white people in the country, and you have to alienate them from black people as much as possible. If you do that, the country will always be weak and dislocated. So that's the idea behind this, and I hope our white compatriots understand that, and that they don't let this situation let them have animosity towards our black compatriots, because the idea is precisely to do that. But if we can look beyond that, we can combine together, and then that's the very thing they fear, and that's the very thing that can make South Africa, in my view, the best country in the world.
Right. Now, before we talk about the next crisis area, I just want to address, we've got about 600 people watching at the moment. Please, guys, remember to subscribe to be kept informed. And if you have questions you'd like to put to Ricardo, please just put them in the side chat, and I'll put those to Ricardo a bit later. Now, among all these crises that South Africa faces, right now is a political crisis. And the political crisis is happening within the ranks of the ANC. And I touched on Ace Magashule a moment ago, and he's now saying, the court system has been used by the ANC faction on the other side to try and bring him down. And he's got a huge amount of support at the top of the ANC. People like Dlamini Zuma, Becky Cele. I mean, there are some very senior people in the ANC hierarchy who are in Ace Magashule's camp. And Ramaphosa is basically sitting on a knife edge, because if they got enough support, they could unseat him and put someone like Dlamini Zuma in there. Now, let's take a worst case scenario where the ANC fractures completely. Do you think that the group who don't like Ramaphosa, it's actually two oligarchies when you think about it. You've got the Zuma oligarchy, that family, and you've got the Ramaphosa oligarchy who basically control South Africa today. It's like two big families, as you were talking about just now. But let's say, for example, the two oligarchies couldn't work together. So they broke away from the ANC. Where would this breakaway party go? Would it join the EFF and Julius Malema, or would they set up another party? What do you think?
Look, it's anyone's game, how that can go. But I think at the moment, I think they would want to stay in the ANC one way or the other. Because to be honest with you, if you look at the horizon in South Africa, there is not much challenge there. So I think what they will do is it will be a mistake. And I don't think they will do that to break away, because they understand whoever dominates the ANC dominates the country. We have controlled opposition in this country. Many of the things that you and I have been discussing here just for the past 2 times that we've been discussing, people have probably heard many of these things for the first time politically being mentioned in South Africa. So that shows you got controlled opposition. So I think what will happen is these two will slug it out inside the ANC to try and get dominance. As you saw, Ace Magashule, when they lost, when he lost, or his group lost to Cyril, he was saying to his guys, just hold on, another 5 years, and we will reverse the situation here. So I think it's going to be unlikely to have a breakaway, because that will be a mistake. They saw the breakaway of COPE. It didn't work out well. They saw the breakaway of the EFF, not working out well. I think another breakout will also not work out well, because these guys have lost all credibility. All of them are just hiding behind the image of the ANC as the Liberation Party and all of that. That's all they got. And if you move away from that image, you will quickly dwindle away. They've seen twice this has happened. One would think they would realize, and based on ACE's strategy of saying, let's wait 5 years, that they've learned from that. But you never know.
Right. Okay. Now, looking at the next crisis, we've got a crime crisis in South Africa. And in particular, we've got a high murder rate across the board, regardless of your race. We've got the farm attacks and farm murders, where they are the ones who actually provide food security, and they're the ones who are being targeted by these gangs, which is quite extraordinary. And Ramaphosa refuses to recognize that. In fact, in his speech last night, he talked about gender-based violence, again, having 5 days of prayer for I suppose he's going to go and sit down with a witch doctor, but that's another story. But let's talk about the crime crisis. How bad is it in South Africa?
Look, it's out of control. I mean, one would argue that you have, criminals in our government. So that's how we have. We've got a list of police commissioners and ex-police commissioners who have been indicted for various crimes. So it's very bad, Scott. And as you can see, imagine as well, there are certain crimes. We've got the politicization of crime here. As you say, people have died in this country for many reasons. And if you're going to have a 5 days of mourning, one should have included there the farm murders. One should have included there the people who actually died at the hands of the police and the military during this lockdown. So many people have succumbed here. So crime is out of control in this country. And the media and the ANC is trying to lie to us. They're trying to say to us, well, the only real problem is gender-based violence. And as you could see, when they highlight a crime, let me put it to you this way. What we're dealing here with is communists. And communists use crime and insecurity as a means for them to further consolidate their power. Right. So when they focus on gender-based violence, soon after that, and I'm sure you've seen it already, then we have gender-based violence-related laws that are now going to give greater power to the government, take away more rights from the people. That's how they operate. So they need crime. They need crime because crime increases their power. Look what they've done. The Cyril Ramaphosa during the lockdown have said we should release some prisoners because they're going to get COVID-19 in jail. And so he released some of these prisoners, and some of these prisoners were violent criminals, and they actually committed some murders in the country. Again, gender-based violence, if you want to call it. So they committed some murders in the country. But what he did is release the violent criminals, and then arrest people for not wearing masks or these kind of breaking the lockdown related rules.
It's crazy.
And then you have a campaign saying, whoa, gender-based violence out of control, because that's how, unfortunately, when you have this kind of government that thrives on crime, you can imagine the kind of situation we live in under, unfortunately, because they do thrive on crime.
Yeah, well, I have to tell you that the fellow they let out on bail, the guy who was alleged to have murdered that young fellow, Brendan, I've forgotten his surname, but that young 21-year-old guy, the one they let out on bail, he's back behind bars for cattle theft. These guys should be locked permanently behind bars, but as you say, this ANC government are letting the crooks out, and that's why there's so much crime in the country. Now, okay, so let's look at the apartheid era. There were criminal networks back then. These occurred before 1994 and have never been dealt with by the ANC government. In fact, if anything, they just got stronger and stronger and stronger, haven't they?
Yeah, look, that's part of the problem. I wanted to. It's a good thing that you bring that into the conversation, because I think that has a lot to do with our current situation. You see, what happened in the past was you had two events happening, I think, that contributed to South Africa being one of the organized crime capitals of the world. The first event was that the ANC was banned. I think the ANC and the PAC were banned, during the apartheid period. And because they were banned organizations, they couldn't operate in South Africa legally and openly. And of course, they had to operate in South Africa because their purpose was to liberate South Africa, if you want to call it. So they had to be here. But the only way that they could now interact in South Africa and do what they needed to do, they needed to then do things deceptively, in dark. They had to basically learn how to smuggle, how to do illegal activities and all of that. And so, unfortunately, if you want to do that kind of thing, you have to then associate with the people who are good at doing it, good at smuggling. And that is organized criminals and intelligence networks. And that's how the ANC got embroiled in that sort of thing. And then obviously that lasted quite a bit, because quite literally, without smuggling, the ANC couldn't have survived. They couldn't have been able to continue their activities. And then if you look at the apartheid government, you had now another event happening that put the National Party government in a difficult position. And that was sanctions. So the sanctions said the National Party government could not openly interact with quite a big part of the international community. And South Africa at that stage obviously needed a lot of oil. We are not a oil producing nation at the moment, but I've heard might be some promising discoveries in future. But at that stage, South Africa was was a net oil importer, still is. And so they couldn't get oil openly, legally. And so they had to make use of smuggling networks and routes, etc., to get oil into the country. And so they also, and who's good at doing that? Unfortunately, organized criminals and intelligence networks, these are good at doing that. So you had both these big players, the apartheid government and the ANC, who made use of organized crime and intelligence networks to do their business. Now, when we had CODESA 94 and all of that, nothing was done in a meaningful way to identify these crime networks and intelligence networks and to get rid of them. And so if we haven't gotten rid of them, then they must still exist. That's my reasoning. And I think that's part of the reason why we have such out of control organized crime in the country. I mean, everybody knows, the identity of many of our big organized criminals, at least the people in the neighborhoods who are staying where these guys operate. But they don't get arrested. Many of our police officers are involved in crime. So this is just evidence to show you that our history of both of these entities in organized crime and intelligence was never dealt with. And there can be a direct correlation between our current situation and our past, unfortunately.
Yeah. So what you're actually saying is we are a gangster state. And not only that, but, the gangsters are the people running the country.
100%. I would say that because you must understand that this thing goes quite, it can go quite big. But in a nutshell, that's the situation. So if you wanted to be very successful in the ANC, then you would have had to be able to operate under these conditions. That you would have been able to sneak in and out of South Africa, sneak messages in and out of South Africa. So you would have then either yourself had to be a good smuggler, and a person who could evade the checks and the borders and all that sort of stuff, or you had to be friends with people who could do that. And then if you were friends, if you could do that, you would be very useful to the organization, and you would probably rise to the top, and you would probably be in government today. And so the similar situation is on the other side in the National Party. It was very useful if you could get some secret loans or whatever from Switzerland, or get oil smuggled into the country. You would be a very useful person to the government, and so you would become a very senior person in the government. And so chances are we've had these kind of people negotiate CODESA, and we've had these kind of people who are running our country at the moment.
Right. Now, let's face it, what we're actually saying here is that if you want to have a career in South Africa, in the 2020 South Africa, what you do is you become a criminal. You join a gang, and then you can make lots of money, like cash in transit, robberies and stuff like that. But apart from crime, there's basically nothing happening when it comes to employment because of what the ANC have done. And by their fruits will you know them. So if you think about crime being the biggest employer in South Africa, and I'm also including in here all the security companies that have to employ hundreds of thousands of people to make sure that that business or that home doesn't get robbed. That it's a huge business. It is probably the largest business in South Africa. Would you disagree with that?
No, look, obviously, I don't know the exact figures, but I would, just from assessing the situation, you're quite right. I mean, look, one is politically, if you are in government and you have a situation where crime is out of control like this, it gives you a huge pretext to grab more and more power. You could have a law and say, look, in order to keep the women safe, we've got to now get everybody's DNA, or we've got to put a police officer in every house. That's the only way to keep people safe. And so in order for us to do this, we have to declare a state of emergency or what. So for a politician, especially one who has got communist inclinations and totalitarian inclinations, crime is brilliant because people are scared and they're willing to give up their rights for you to do something about it. And then, of course, from a financial point of view, so you could sell people insurance, you could sell people security, etc. Fear makes a lot of power for politicians, and fear makes a lot of money in the business world as well. So you're quite right. Unfortunately, that's the situation. But it's a situation that we have to understand where it comes from and how it operates, so that we don't become victim to it and be deceived by it. And so that we eventually can make South Africa into a true paradise and not a gangster's paradise.
Yeah. I think South Africa's got the highest rate of PTSD among the population of any country in the world because of the way the country is just breaking up. Now, one of the major the major players in getting what's happening in South Africa out are the mainstream media in South Africa, and clearly they are putting out fake news. We had that story, I think it was just yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday, where Anchor came out with a video where they suggested that it was the white parents' fault what happened at Brackenfell, because although they were just protecting their kids, because the EFF have a reputation for being quite violent. And the way Anchor put a spin on this was to suggest that even at Senekal, where Julius Malema said, kill the Boer and burn their farms down, the EFF did nothing wrong. But the whites, the naughty whites, They were the ones who caused the trouble. They were the ones who were racist and all this sort of stuff. That was in the Enker report. And then, not long after that video came out, the Sun newspaper in the UK came out, and I put a video up about this as well. They came out with an article talking about what happened at Brackenfell, and they called the whites thugs. Now, that's the level of fake news that comes out of reporting today, and how it's spread by bad reporting in South Africa and then landing up, you know, in other countries, suggesting that the white community is still racist and bad, and, you know, they're thugs and all this sort of stuff, when they are living in fear for their lives. You know, the level of fake news. We have a media crisis in South Africa. Do you want to talk about that?
Look, I agree with you 100%. You know, the media in South Africa has a very important role to play, and that is to tell people the truth. Tell people so that they can know to take the right decisions. When you have a situation in South Africa where our society is in chaos like this, it doesn't function well. We don't know where the problems are. It just shows that the very eyes and ears of the public is deceiving us into making wrong decisions. Look, I don't know the detail of the Brackenfell situation. Obviously, I don't like South Africans to be violent towards each other. That's not a good thing. Look, the ANC has the EFF has been building up a reputation of violence, you know. But as I say, they're a communist organization, and show me the communist organization that is ultimately peaceful. If you want to dominate over people, if you want to take away their property, tell them what to do. This requires a lot of aggression and violence and all of that. And so the EFF has been behaving like this. And I would look. It is very bad of them. They are putting themselves in a position as leaders of society, or wanting to be leaders of society. So they should show an example, and they shouldn't get into violence like that with South African citizens, with parents. That is not a good thing. Our media is not honest, unfortunately. They are not telling South Africans the real picture of what's going on in this country. And that's why South Africans are finding it so difficult to get out of the situation. No one is asking, the president, what about the people's rights? Is it right for him just to have a council meeting and come back and then take another right away, impose this? Is it right in a democracy for people not to be sure, to sit and say, we hope he's not going to take that right away. We hope. What happened to public participation and all of that kind of thing? So yes, you're absolutely right. The media does not ask these questions. It is frustrating to watch them interview the president or interview any politician in this country. When they talk about the Reserve Bank and the Reserve Bank's independence, they don't also explain to the public this is an entity that is influencing our whole economy every time they set interest rates. This is an entity that controls the South African currency, that creates money out of thin air and then indebts people. So you're absolutely right. You never hear these kind of discussions in the media, and that's why we have these problems everywhere. With gender-based violence as well. People don't ask the question.
Yeah.
But South Africa is not a peaceful country. People are dying. There's crime everywhere. Why is the government now only focusing on this? What's the agenda? And why is the government now saying that new laws and regulations are necessary to fix this problem? And you can see, the crime is everywhere. Can we really be fooled that the government is serious and all of that? So what I'm saying is, in a nutshell, Scott, I know I'm going a bit all over the place here, but yes, the media in South Africa has disappointed us. And one time or the other, we will have to hold them accountable, because there's a lot of people who are losing their lives because of this, their livelihoods because of this. This lies and deception has real cost. And this lies and deception is a crime against this country, a crime against this people.
Right.
And if I have anything to do with it, one day they will have to be held accountable for this.
Right. Now, the Constitution gives all political power. You just talked about the Constitution. It gives all political power to the politicians and all financial power to the South African Reserve Bank. Now, the South African Reserve Bank, they want to nationalize so that the government basically runs it. But even now, you've got a platform for collusion to dominate the South African economy by the ANC, haven't you?
Yeah. No, 100%. Look, whenever how do you have collusion in any situation? Is if there are two people, or at least a few people, who know if they work together, they can dominate everybody. And if they know if they work together, they can maintain their power. So our constitution has given politicians in this country unlimited power virtually. You see, our country is supposed to be a republic. And a republic is supposed to be a situation where there are certain rights that cannot be abrogated. There are certain rights of the individual that can never be taken away. So you cannot just vote and have a majority. But in South Africa, you have a situation where the ANC can say that let's put our hands up in the middle of the night. The ANC can say in the middle of the night, let's put our hands up and vote whether it's night or day outside. Right. So you could vote truth away into falsehood. There is no limitation on how they can abuse their majority. And that's what the Constitution has done. We are a republic in name, but in reality, we are a communist regime where if you can, by hook or crook, get a majority, you can do whatever you like. So that's the amount of political power you have. And the Bill of Rights, any right that the individual have in South Africa is conditional. If you go to the Constitution and you read the section on the rights, you have a right to this, education, whatever. And then immediately after that is a whole list of things that can take your rights away, including the lockdown that we have now here. So politicians' rights cannot be taken away, but the individuals' rights can be taken away for many reasons. The reserve banks, the Constitution makes it clear, the Reserve Bank must be independent. That's how it declares. It must be independent. And the Reserve Bank must do what other central banks do. I mean, that's how vague it is. You know, it has no control in the country. So these two, with this kind of power that they have, they can ensure that this beautiful country with all its natural resources, with all its young people and youth, that between them, they can work together to ensure they dominate this entire society. And that's exactly what they do. The ANC is busy regulating every single part of our lives. They can regulate our wealth away. And the Reserve Bank and the other banks, they own this whole economy. You cannot transact any type of business in South Africa's borders of significance without the banks. And you cannot do anything outside of this country without the Reserve Bank. And they can shut you down for whatever reason. So that is a perfect recipe for collusion. And under that as well, you can put the whole thing of black economic empowerment. You can see that black economic empowerment to some degree is an example of this collusion. So you have a situation, who made some of the biggest BE deals? The banks. Now, what I'm saying as well, in future as South Africans, if we are serious about our country, we have to investigate this as well. What do you call it when a business person or a business entity gives money, favors, or whatever to a powerful politician, and the powerful politician in turn makes rules, regulations, spends money in favor of this business? It's corruption. Yeah. And BEE has a lot of that to it. It proves my point of collusion as well.
Right. Now, we've got 700 people watching us at the moment, and I just want to address them quickly. If you haven't subscribed to Loving Life yet, please do so, and please like this video. Let's get it way up over 220 likes. And also, please, if you'd like to put a question to my guest, Ricardo Marmon, please just put it in the side chat and we'll present that to him later. The subject is the crises happening in South Africa, and we're just going through them one by one. Okay, so let's look at another area which you just touched on, which is the health crisis. You know, you look at the public health system, it's in a complete disarray right now. It is just absolutely shocking. And yet the media, again, we're talking about the fake news in South Africa, hardly touch on what's going on in the public hospital system. But you ask anybody who's been to one of the public hospitals, with very few exceptions, and they'll tell you what chaos is going on inside that public hospital, which are now really seen as a place that you go to die. So you stay out of the public health system to try and keep yourself alive, even if you're very sick. That's how crazy the system has become. What's the answer to this?
Look, the answer to many of South Africa's problems is we have to have another government in place, unfortunately. We have to have a government in place. South Africans need to stand up. South Africans have to take many of their functions in our society in their own hands. That's the only way it needs to be done. But as you can see here this is part of the plan. To make sure people are living in fear, because that's another fear. If you are afraid to go to the hospital, you are afraid, you are worn down emotionally, you must be in this stressed out situation. And I can assure you, what is the solution? To take more power away. So they create a health crisis in South Africa. And what is the solution? To create this national health system or whatever that they want to do. We have to put a law in place. And we have to get control of the entire healthcare system as well. Like I told you in the beginning, this is communist tactics.
Right.
Create a problem and then use that problem to increase your power. And of course, there's two things to it. The communists always work together with the capitalists. Unfortunately, that's how it is. Most people don't realize it. But like in South Africa, the idea is to get South Africa financially poor, so that the capitalists can benefit by getting our resources cheap. Now, the same thing is get our healthcare system into a crisis and get out competition so that those capitalists who own some of the financial systems and some of the healthcare systems, whatever, they can now work together with the ANC government and they're going to make a killing. And they're both benefiting from this. The politicians benefit by getting new laws and getting more power over the healthcare system. And those guys with the money that are close to the politicians, the bankers, etc., they benefit because they can get now a healthcare system that they can completely control and suck out every little profit they can out of the people, with the help of the government and the police, etc.
Yeah, now I have to tell you, there's a very disturbing development with the health area in general, globally. And now that Biden is the president-elect, even though I think Trump is still going to win. But if the Democrats do get in, they're going to go back into a health system which is rather like what South Africa is wanting to do, which is the NHI, the National Health Insurance Scheme. Now, this kind of health scheme seems to be being rolled out globally. And it's, again, part of this New World Order thing that we'll look at in a second. But what I wanted to ask you is, how can South Africa afford to set up a national health insurance scheme when we haven't got enough money to bail out South African Airways, which they've totally destroyed?
Look, how can I put it to you, Scott? South Africa is a very, very rich country. We can afford to do this if our finances are well managed. Like I say, these guys are, what they're doing here is, if I'm put in charge of a business, but I have a buddy on the outside that wants to buy it, so I then run the business down the ground, knowing that the business has got good assets, and so if it's financially poor, you can come in and buy out the assets. So that's the situation. So yes, South Africa does have the money for us to have one of the best healthcare systems in the world, but why don't we have the finances to pay for it? Go ask the banks how they are, siphoning off a lot of the money out of this country. Go ask the Reserve Bank, the IMF, the World Bank, many of the international financiers. That's where our money goes to. So I'm not in favor, personally, I'm not in favor of communism. I don't like communism. And I don't like the government to control everything and tell people how to use, how to take care of their own health, etc. But if they want to, South Africa can do that. But I don't think that we can afford that if we manage our finances properly. But I think the objective here is just to control people. The objective here is to control people and to exploit them. That's why they want to consolidate the health systems like this.
Right.
But we can afford it, Scott. South Africa has a lot of money.
Okay. Now, just cutting and pasting a few of the questions that are coming through now. Um, okay, right, got those. All right. Now, I just want to look at for a second two employment areas that traditionally employ a huge number of South Africans that have been totally devastated by this lockdown, totally devastated. And they are critical to South Africa getting finance come in or people spending money in South Africa from overseas. And the one in particular is the tourism industry, which has been completely destroyed. And then you've got the entertainment industry, which is completely destroyed as well because of this harsh lockdown. How can these industries actually rebuild? And do you think that when Ramaphosa talks about black economic transformation winning as a result of the lockdown and the economy being just fine, and he made that statement back in April, is he talking about white tourism businesses, for example, going into bankruptcy because they've got debts and they can't afford to pay back their loans, and those businesses being snapped up as we come out of lockdown by black entrepreneurs at ridiculously low prices, and then you've got black economic transformation. Do you think that that's what Ramaphosa is talking about, in sort of double speak?
Look, as I say, Scott, this is we are dealing here with just deception. So that's the talk, but that's not what he means, and that's not what's going to happen. They mean to collapse the entire economy, Scott, and they want people to be dependent on the government. This is totalitarianism. This is a situation where you want people to be poor so they can depend on the government. But in order to make them poor, you have to keep them divided. So you have to have a situation where the black population in the country will be patient with some of this economic destruction that he's doing, because they might hope that that's going to be the case, and until it's too late. But definitely, that's not the idea. The idea here is to destroy our economy, so that you can then destroy this economy and use the wealth and the people that is in it to your benefit. But I can't see a situation, because you must understand, people are going to be scared of traveling unless something very, very drastic happens in the world. People are going to be scared of traveling and going for holiday anyway. And even in South Africa, he says now he's lifted it up and they're going to make money available to supposedly black businesses in the tourism industry. But at the same time, you still have us on lockdown level 1, and you threaten that as soon as there's too many people coughing, you might increase to level 4 or 5. And so who wants to travel to a country where you have that situation? So he's not serious. This is lies, Scott. Like I say to you, the same thing as well. When they say they want to stop gender-based violence, it's lies. Or any violence in the country is lies. They just use that to get more control. They're not doing anything meaningful. They're not training our police. They're not increasing the police resources, whatever. They're not serious about crime. So they're lying about that. The same thing with the economy. Cyril Ramaphosa is not serious about saving and fixing this economy, but he doesn't want to be stopped now while he's busy breaking this economy down. And he thinks the only people who can stop him is a black majority. So let's lie to them while we break it down, and they will wait and hope and see, and then I break it down in the meantime. That's his strategy.
Okay, well, I've got one simple question for you. You said that the black population need to be patient, okay, while they're going through this process. How do starving people be patient? They're starving. They're dying of starvation. How can they be patient? What they're going to do is they're going to find any which way to get money to buy food. And that's what's pushing crime right up through the roof. So what you've got is a situation in South Africa where this crime crisis we talked about just now is going to get even more crazy, don't you think? But how can the black population be patient?
Look, as I say, people, that's the plan. Like I say to you, the way I see it and the way he's doing it is to say, look, let's divide the South African population on this issue of the economy. And how do we divide them? We make sure that we impoverish both of them, but we promise one of them we're going to help them. And then hopefully they can be patient. And so when these two parts of our economy don't work together, they can't do nothing about me. And amongst, obviously, the poor, there's levels of poverty here. So the ones that are very poor, I'm going to give them 350 Rand, and that will keep them passive to some degree. And the other ones will, they have a little bit of money or a job here. They feel there's a bit of hope. This is a divide and rule strategy, and this is buying time. So you want to destroy it to a point where there's no turning back. They can't stop you anymore. And you must understand, the last draw or the last card here in a communist system like this is that eventually when the people realize that you don't mean them well, then you've weakened them psychologically, you've divided them, you have impoverished them, and now you can put a boot to their neck with your military force, etc. So yes, you're quite right. The people can't remain patient with this situation. I think they calculate that they will be able at least to give them food parcels or whatever to keep them patient. I think they won't be patient. And I think with your help, Scott, we're going to make sure that they don't stay patient, that they demand their rights, and that they realize the deception that's going on here. So yes, he's planning what he's planning, but we can see what he's planning. And we don't think his plan is going to work for the reasons that you say. How can people stay patient when they are poor and hungry? And we have to show the people a solution and a way forward. And then it will even be more difficult for him to stick to this course that he's sticking to, looks like.
Right. Now, that 350 Rand, first of all, it's a pittance. It's a tiny amount of money. But he said that's going to stop in January. And he said it's stopping in January because the country can't afford to keep paying that sort of money. Now, what's happening is that the money supply is it's unwrapping. The taxation coming into South Africa from taxes has completely crumbled away. That base of money, which is largely from the minority groups who are providing most of the tax. So without that tax coming in, you can't actually do stuff because you don't have the money there. So we have a tax crisis in South Africa, and part of that is a brain drain that the ANC are causing. Tell us about the tax crisis and the complete at odds, the amount of money they're spending and the amount of money that they're getting in from tax.
Look, as I said, Scott, you're quite right there. We're heading for a very, very steep crisis here. Look, firstly, on the issue of the 350s, I think, look, what you're seeing here is he's testing the resolve of South Africans. So they are announcing they're going to cut it now in December and see what happens. There's not a big reaction. Okay, we're going to do it. The people react a little bit of criticism. Okay, we're going to extend it to January. This is testing the people out, testing the resolve, testing when we eventually cut it all together. How big is the protest we're really going to get? And how strong is the will of South Africa and all of that kind of thing. So I think that's a bit of playing with people around. And also to keep people, as we said, the other objective of communism, keep people on edge, keep them in a state of uncertainty, in a state of fear. Because if they're in a state of uncertainty and fear, they don't think clearly, they can be better deceived, and they are willing to give up their rights. And you can use them to bully others. So you can say to the people, if you want to continue receiving your 350, then maybe we should take something from the other people, because these other people don't want to share. They got bigger houses, they got more money, so
like the pension funds.
Yes, exactly. So that's what they want to do here. So it's part of the reason keep people desperate, so that you can use the population against each other. I mean, this is the kind of tactics these guys do. As far as the tax base is concerned, you're absolutely right. I mean, they have just decimated the tax base. And I don't think it'll recover soon. We're going to have a huge deficit. The financial trouble of our country is going to spiral down. And you must understand one thing. The people that are borrowing money to this country, they are borrowing money that they create out of thin air.
Exactly.
So by the time this country is up to its neck in debt and we can't afford nothing, which is going to come very soon, as you say, if we not collect enough taxes, then they're going to say, okay, unfortunately, guys, you can't pay now, so we're going to have to take some assets. Because look how much you owe us. You owe us 80 trillion or something.
Yeah.
And then say, okay, please just take it. Just we can't pay the 80 trillion. And then guess what they're going to do? They're going to take whatever we have, and they're going to go back to their ledgers or financial books, and they're just going to draw a line through the 80 trillion or whatever we owe them, because that's all it is. It's nothing. But they're going to get so much out of that nothing. So You're quite right, Scott. Our tax base is going nowhere, but that should show you that there is no intention from this government to rescue this economy, whether for blacks or for whites. There is no intention whatsoever. This guy is deceiving us, and is doing a good job of it, and he seems to be getting more calmer as he's deceiving us. But that's what he's doing. It's just deception. There's nothing tangible out of this. There's no recovery out of this, unless we try to force these guys, or get to the street, petition or whatever, and say they need to step down, and we get some people in charge who are serious about reforming the economy and reforming the country.
Right. Now, I just want to pick up on your point about money being printed out of fresh air. That's why it's called fiat money. For people who don't know, that the money we use around the world today is not backed by anything. It's basically the ability for a country to collect enough taxation to pay its debt on the money it's borrowed, that this money is created out of fresh air. It's called fiat. And I know this might sound a bit crazy, but in the next week, I'm going to be having Michael Dier, who is actually a shareholder in the South African Reserve Bank, on a live stream here on Loving Life at 8 p.m. one night in the coming week. We're going to be talking about how these central banks work, how money is created. You're going to hear it from an expert in this subject. We're going to find out about the Bank of International Settlements, which sits right at the top of the pyramid above the central banks and basically runs the system. We're going to find out who's behind the Bank of International Settlements, which is in Switzerland, in Basel. And there's going to be a really interesting discussion about the financial system and how completely it's a scam. The whole fiat system is a scam, basically. The money used today is it's only paper. It's got nothing backing it at all. Now, let's move on to a subject that we have touched on, and that's the constitutional side of things. Okay, now the constitution in South Africa, I would suggest, is invalid, and I'll tell you why. Only political parties participated in the discussion and ratification of the Constitution. The people did not participate. In the Republic, the people's participation is indispensable. Now, if you look at what they've done with the latest amendment with expropriation without compensation, the people, there was no referendum. The people played no part in that. So what is the South African Constitution all about? Is it a valid document today, or is it just something that they can just walk all over?
Look, I agree with you 100% there, Scott. Look, in my view, it is not valid. Because, look, as you say, South Africa, in the name of the country, it's called a republic. And a republic means that the power rests with the citizens. It is the citizens that will decide what happens in this country. Now, the Constitution is the most basic building block for our entire country, of how power and wealth, etc., is going to be distributed in this country. So it would only make sense that in such an important contract document that the Constitution is, that the original holders of power will be the ones that, determine the Constitution. Now, did that happen in South Africa? No. The citizens did not determine the Constitution. The CODESA negotiations was done purely by political parties. And of course, who was heading up those discussions? Ramaphosa. And maybe he was preparing for himself to be president today and have all this kind of power. So yes, the people did not participate in the discussion, so they did not determine what is in the Constitution. Secondly, the people did not ratify the Constitution. The people had an election in 1994 where they thought they are bringing Mandela to power. And then in 1996, yes, they did do that. They brought Mandela to power. But in 1996, that government also then just adopted a constitution. So that you have two things there. The people did not participate in the original discussion, and in a republic, that is not a good thing. So that makes it invalid. Number two, the people did not ratify. They did not confirm or agree to this constitution officially in a clear manner. So that makes it invalid again. And number three, if you look at the constitution itself, the people have no real absolute power or rights in the constitution. Every single right that a person has in South Africa can be set aside. Your property can be taken away if a majority votes so. The content of the constitution does not benefit the average citizen. So the constitution is invalid in terms of its procedure, and it's invalid in its content, and in as far as the morality is concerned. So therefore, in my view, it is invalid, and we have to go and revisit the constitution. We have to review it, and we have to redraft it to shape our country in the right way.
Right. Now, we've got nearly 800 people watching at the moment. And please, guys, remember to subscribe to Loving Life to be kept informed. And if you've got questions you'd like to put to Ricardo, please just put those in the side chat. And I would just remind people watching that tomorrow night at 8 p.m., we have another one of our really popular jamming sessions. And we're going to have Peter Boyson on. And he's a great singer. And it's just a relaxing evening that goes for a couple of hours. You can sit down, have a drink, kick off your shoes, listen to lovely music, join the side chat. It's the Loving Life family. Just be part of a relaxing night. That's tomorrow night. I know tonight is very serious, but this is a subject that needs to be discussed. Now, Ricardo, how do we get out of all these crises? Obviously, changing the government is number one, but just tell us, what is the road?
Look, I think that's the first one. Maybe we will leave that one for last. But to get out of the financial crisis, we have to go to reform the South African Reserve Bank and the banking structure in the country. That's a big problem. So we have to go there and do some reforms there. Get our people out of debt, get our government out of debt, and make sure that our economy can be unshackled from this debt and move forward a little bit better. Secondly, we have to challenge the IMF. You know, we have to say to the IMF and the World Bank, we can't be paying back all this debt. I mean, these guys should know by now that the ANC is a corrupt government.
Yeah.
And when they borrow money to the to Eskom, the money is being wasted. I'm sure they also have heard of the Zondo Commission and all of that, but they haven't stopped borrowing money. So we are saying you are not being sincere. We are suspecting that this is predatory debt, that you are trying to hijack our economy, all of that. So if you are sincere as IMF and World Bank and many other international financiers, please let us investigate this matter. Let us, for once and for all, determine whether you are a sincere financial provider in the world economy, that you are giving us debt sincerely and in good faith, that you are not trying to enslave us. Let us determine that first. And in the moment, and while we're determining that, to whatever process, court process or whatever, we are not paying back the debt. We're going to use that money to try and get our economy out of this situation. Secondly, as well, we have to also, as a country, deal with the issue of reparations. You know, in a friendly discussions with our former colonial masters, because the irony of the situation, Scott, is that the same people who have indebted us to our necks, that control the IMF and the World Bank, are the same people who have for years benefited from the mineral resources being dug out of South Africa. And they've admitted. They have said, you know, colonialism is wrong and apartheid is a crime against humanity, etc. So let's talk about, friendly reparations, especially in this time of crisis. How can you get this debt off our necks? And how can you, contribute to our economy so that our economy can recover? So those are the things I would do financially. And then, of course, moving forward, Scott, we have to industrialize this country in a hurry. We have to make sure that our housing crisis in this country is gone, that we have a proper transport system in this country. Once we've recovered the money in the way that I described, we can then spend it on all of these things. and then I think we should get ourselves in a good position. The other one financially is we are losing a lot of money every day as we speak, because we've got a parliament, we've got 400 members of parliament who are virtually doing nothing, who has not been loyal to this country. We pay a lot of money to them. I think it's a waste of money that we're paying to them. So I think parliament should be dissolved. They should volunteer. If they love this country and they have any little bit of patriotism, they should dissolve themselves. And we should stop paying that money. We should have a direct democracy. We should stop paying that money, have a direct democracy for a while, and our country will save money. And the executive, we must also ask the executive, look, Mr. President, and the rest of you guys, please do the right thing and resign, because you are costing us money. You are in no position to stop the corruption, and we are in no position to tolerate this corruption any further. It's destroying the country's finances. So if you do those things that I've suggested, that's how we can solve our financial problem. And once we've solved our financial problem, we have all the building blocks to turn the economy around. If we have good finances, we have a young population. A young population means people can work, people can build things, etc. We have all the natural resources that we need here. If we industrialize, we can build and make all kinds of things in the world. I've now heard recently there's been gas discoveries off the coast of South Africa. So that will give us a good energy supply. And that'll make our economy almost perfect, if you like.
Right.
We will have our natural resources, we have our gas, etc. So these are the things that we have to do. But the first place we have to start is we have to try and put pressure on this government to resign. Maybe we can discuss that a little bit later as well.
Right. Now, what about the crime crisis? You know, this is absolutely out of control. You mentioned the gas offshore. Now, when something is built in South Africa, invariably someone goes and blows it up. Now, a gas pipeline crossing South Africa would be like, you know, target practice for someone, because they've used bombs to blow up CIT vehicles. Now, you can just see what's going to happen. They build this gas pipeline, and someone will go there with a bomb and blow the damn thing up, and then you've got a huge problem. That's a mentality I don't understand that's happening in South Africa. How do we fix that mentality of people who do this sort of stuff?
Look, as I say, Scott, I don't really think I think the vast majority of South African people are, you know, peaceful, law-abiding people.
I agree.
We've seen now how, in my opinion, you know, for many of us like yourself, I'm sure, how annoyingly many South Africans have so, you know, patiently and faithfully obeyed Ramaphosa's, you know, totalitarian demands and things that he's done. The crime problem in South Africa is an organized crime problem. And once we you know, convince this government to step down, we would have been able to solve 90% of our crime problem. Because you must understand, when people have explosives, this means they must have access to the military, or this means they must have access to very good smuggling routes, and this means they must have good police officers, whoever that they work with, that they can't get caught, or maybe they are on police protection. Yeah. They are state witnesses, who knows? So what I'm saying is, Scott, is much of our crime is organized, the majority of it. And the reason why organized crime survives so well is because organized crime has a partner in government. And if the government is changed, I think we would have gone a long way in dealing with that. And these pipelines, the concern that you've had on the pipelines, usually if pipelines are attacked in that manner, there must be organized crime behind it. I don't think ordinary citizens would do that kind of thing. And so if you get rid of a government that has got deep ties to organized crime, then the organized criminals will not have that protection anymore in the government. And it will just be a matter of time before they just get swooped up, to be honest with you.
Right. Now, I want to just change subject completely, to turn 180 degrees the other way. There's a lot of talk about a great financial reset happening next year or in the next couple of years around the world. And part of that is what they're talking about, having a new world order. And you've heard American politicians talk about the New World Order. You've had politicians in Europe talking about the New World Order. There's something happening behind the scenes. If you look at what the World Economic Forum were talking about, they actually go as far as to say, well, this is going to happen. There's going to be one global government. There's going to be one financial system which is going to fix all the problems of all these countries that have been impacted by the lockdown and COVID-19. And it's almost like a fait accompli as far as they're concerned. What are your views on this talk about a new world order coming in?
Look, I think they, when they're talking about it so hard, they're trying to convince us about it. So I don't think it is a done deal as yet, to be honest with you. So I think they're trying to convince us. I think they're very confident in their plans. Look, they've got an enormous amount of control. They're controlling the media, the information flow as much as possible, but not completely. The fact that I'm talking to you now here shows that they don't have 100% control over the information flow. They also don't have 100% control over the wealth and all of that. They almost there. They're trying to get there. This talk that is so similar around the world, this is trying to mentally condition people. And obviously, as you see, we have fear. We have a lockdown here. So you put people in a state of fear and in a state of distraction. So that makes it easier then for you to push this propaganda on them and retrain them. So the first thing you want to do is, if you want to train a dog or anything like that, I'm not saying people are dogs, but if you want to train, you have to first get people's attention. You have to put them in a difficult situation where you can now determine rewards and punishments. And then you have to now send them certain signals. They have to know if something taps here, they got to jump there, etc. And so this is what you're seeing doing. Lockdown, harsh measures, restrictions, threats, and then certain key words that are being pounded everywhere. That's what they're trying to do here, Scott. They're trying to prepare us for something, for what's coming, and they're trying to convince us that don't even try to resist. We've got this. But when someone is trying to convince you not to resist, then they're scared of you resisting.
Right, and of course you have got some countries which I don't think will buy into the New World Order, and I think Australia could well be one of them, hopefully. But I do have to say my own point of view is that the whole coronavirus situation is a scam. I mean, what happened to the flu this year? There was no flu. The coronavirus was the flu. All they did was they gave it a fancy name. The media put the fear of God into everybody about this virus. And, the whole thing is a complete and utter scam, which brings me to your comment about we can still have these discussions like we are right now. Let me tell you, I started putting videos up on YouTube, years ago. But, I only put up 1 or 2 every 6 months. But in the last 3 years, I've been putting up videos pretty well every day. And I can tell you, just in the last 3 years, the constraints that YouTube have brought in to limit what I can say, what I can do, and they use the strike situation. If you get 3 strikes, they take down your channel like that. That is how they're actually constraining freedom of speech on platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all these very big platforms which are controlled by the same people who run the big media companies. So there are only 6 big media companies left in the world today. And they basically work together and have the same agenda, which reflects in their reporting and the way they report. So we are facing a pickle because, everything is now being concentrated in the hands of so few people. Do you have any thoughts or comments to make about that?
No, 100%. Like I said to you, is that they've got a lot of influence. But as I said, they're not 100% there. They still want to get there. And yes, for example, there's a loophole here. So you and I are still communicating, and now what they're going to do is they're trying to move into social media a little bit more. They're trying to control that as well. Now, when they have controlled social media completely, and they're moving very fast there, then we have a problem. So what I'm saying is, these guys are about 90%, maybe even closer to accomplishing total control. Now, you see, the thing is, if you're staying in a communist country, or in a country where the government has complete total control, to get freedom out of that situation is very difficult for people to accomplish inside the country. You usually need someone to help you from the outside. You know, you need another government or something to sponsor you. Yeah. Now, I fear, unfortunately, if these guys get full totalitarian grip on the entire world, I don't know who's going to help us from Mars or something. You know? So what we have to do is we have to try our very best to reawaken, rekindle our republicanism and democracy, and try to stop them. And we have to understand the new normal isn't fully here yet. They're trying to convince us about it. We got to wake up, and we got to stop them before they fully put the cuffs on us. Because if the cuffs are on us, it's going to be difficult to take them off. Very, very difficult.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Yeah. Now, before we go into the way forward for South Africa, I just want to once again address, we've got well over 700 people watching right now. Please, guys, remember to subscribe to the Loving Life channel to be kept informed. And also, if you have questions for Ricardo, please just put them in the side chat and I'll put those to him. And please make sure you put Loving Life so that it sticks out in the question. Now, Adrian van Zale says, "Hi, Scott. Please ask Ricardo if he was born in Port Elizabeth and if his father is John Marmon."
No, I was not born there. No, both. Okay. No to both those questions.
Okay. Annie Attia asks, "How do you change the mindset of the black majority that the ANC is bad news for this country?"
Well, look, I don't think we need to do a lot of mind changing. I think most people have understood that. If you look at the voter turnouts over the past few years, last election, 15 million South Africans chose not to vote. So that shows, you know, that I actually commend them for that, because my contention is the ANC is not our only problem. All of these other political parties in parliament are our problem. So those 15 million South Africans, they've noticed that and they've done that. So what I'm saying is that people do realize it. It's just people need proper option. So black South Africans realize this, you know, just as anybody does, because they are also they at the worst end of the suffering here as well. All South Africans realize it. It's just that all South Africans don't realize that all South Africans realize it.
You're right. Okay, now I've got two questions which are very similar, so I'll put them together. This is from Bruce Basters and Liam Peterson. They say, "Does Ricardo support Cape secession?" Or Liam says, does Ricardo support separatism? So basically it's the same type of question.
Yeah. No, I don't support that. What I do support is a decentralized form of government. But I think, so yes, there should be decentralized form of government. People should have the capacity to determine their own destiny, even within a country. But South Africa is a big country. So in some parts of our country, we should give people a little bit of leeway to determine their destiny and live like that. But to separate from the country would not be a good idea, because there will now be a much better opportunity for the New World Order to divide and rule us. So we should stick together as much as we can. But obviously we should try and change this centralized, suffocating form of government that the ANC currently has.
Right. Now, Sovereign Air has said, are you asking for reparations from whites? In other words, for the whites to have to pay something? If so, how does Ricardo justify no hard-working, decent whites will accept this?
No. Look, whites in South Africa, they are our brothers and our sisters. And it is my view that we've been both victims from, external manipulation for a very long time. And so what I'm saying is the real beneficiaries, white people in South Africa, have not been the primary beneficiaries of our gold and diamonds and all of the wealth that has been dug out and exported out of this country. So I would like to have a discussion with those countries who have received our gold and diamonds over many years. And I would like to have peaceful, respectful, amicable discussions with them on how they could, give us a fair share out of all of the wealth that they've taken out of our country. Considering, of course, that, a lot of hands have changed, a lot of generations have changed here. That's why my emphasis is it should be friendly, amicable discussions, because we are talking now maybe to countries who have even changed. Their colonial stances and all of that has changed. So we can't go there or have the attitude of finger pointing and demanding and that sort of thing. But we have to just morally, respectfully discuss it. But short answer, no, not to white people in South Africa. They are our brothers and sisters. No reparations that they should pay.
Right. Okay. Now, Lord of Ice Coffee, now that's an interesting username, says, how do we punish a fake media legally into telling the truth without twisting the words or fake framing?
We should have laws to that effect. I mean, we should have law. I think there are laws, but they are so vague and they are probably not even implemented. But we should redo our constitution. A country cannot function well if it is operating on lies and deception. And the media is supposed to be the one that gives us true information so that we can take good decisions and then have a well-functioning society. So simply put, we should put these guys to trial. So if we have a new government in place, we should keep people accountable for the lies that they've told. And if those lies have cost people lives, then they should be held responsible, accessory to murder or whatever the case might be.
Right.
If they've led the people into economic sabotage with their lies, they need to be held responsible. If there's not sufficient laws, we need to make them. Yeah.
I think what needs to happen is that the media in South Africa need to be broken up into totally independent owners, not have Naspers, for example, who just about control the media in South Africa, pumping out all the crap that they do. If you've got different owners owning each media, like Enka, News 24, Mail and Guardian, Daily Maverick, if you had totally different publishers for each one, you would have a diversity in views and you would get a balance in reporting that way. The problem is you've got the same, that like in the world, the mainstream media is so concentrated by so few owners that they control what we hear, and most of it is fake. That is a problem. Now, ZS3PV says, do you think that this total takeover of our freedom will be accomplished in full in our lifetime? What do you think the timeline would look like from here on?
Look, I think it's quite possible. The way I see it now is that I think they're pushing it for in the next few years, maybe decade tops, maybe even less, that they're going to do it. Because you must understand their control over the media, as Scott said, is almost there. Their control over the finances. I've heard the IMF is talking about, changing the currency structure of the world or whatever. So we're probably moving into a one world currency very fast. So they could quite possibly do it in our lifetime. I think they will. And therefore, I think us who are alive now, we have to do something. We have to try and stop these people.
Right. Okay. Now I've got a bunch of questions coming through. So I'm just letting everybody in the side chat know that I'm getting to them. Okay. Stronger Together asks, please ask Ricardo if if he means federal states in which each province determines its own laws, or what do you mean? I think he's talking about direct elections and stuff like that.
Okay, well, when I mean, I think maybe it means a decentralization, but I'll speak about direct elections as well. Look, with the decentralization I believe that there should be a little bit autonomy, that people should be able to make decisions at a local level as much as possible. For example, people who are staying around a park where the kids play in and their swings, they should determine how many swings are in the park and how many trees, whatever. That shouldn't be done on a national level or things like that. Now, whether we have a federal state or exactly the form it will take, I think as South Africans we need to debate. We need to debate that issue. But I definitely am in favor of a decentralized form of government. When it comes to direct democracy, what I mean by direct democracy is that unless there is some very good reasons why the people can't take certain decisions directly, we should prefer them to take certain decisions directly. We should have a referendum. Again, as I made the example of the park, those people staying around the park, they should be the ones who are preferred to make a decision about the park. And in South Africa, important issues should be whether our nation gets into debt or how much debt we get into. That should be a decision that the whole country should make, and we should have a referendum on the issue. So when I mean direct democracy, I mean it in that sense.
Right.
That there are some things we should let the people decide.
Okay, now, Hypo's asked, does Ricardo have a political party? Well, you have the Republic Party.
Yeah.
And do you have a Twitter or Facebook account so people can find you?
They can go to our website, republicans.org.za.
Okay, republicans.org.za to go to Ricardo's political party. Okay, now Alan Morris has asked, please ask Ricardo for his viewpoint on the farm murders in South Africa. Is this targeted white genocide?
I think it is both, to be honest with you. I think directly, yes. I think people are going after. I don't know if it's a genocide, to be honest, but I think people are trying to scare people off their land. They obviously killing people. I think it's very organized. I think obviously the intent and consequence behind that is going to be food shortage in the country. So then it's going to be an extension of trying to murder through starvation a larger portion of our population. So yes, I think it's a terrible thing that is happening in the country, and I think there is an attempt there to threaten or to a genocide of our country. But I think it's the entire country, because if there's no food production, we all starve. And if someone is trying to cut off the food production, they're trying to kill all of us, black and white. But again, the tactic is, as people must understand, divide and rule. That's how you defeat your enemy. And the idea here is to ensure that farmers feel that they are being isolated, they are alone, and so they don't reach out to the rest of the population so they can work together. But the consequence of this attack will result in the destruction of the entire country.
Right. Now, just to Bev Sterrett. Bev, I'm going to include your question into the next segment that I discuss with Ricardo, because that's very relevant to what we'll be talking about. DJ Mkeza says, okay, DJ Mkeza, that's the same as Bev. I will include that in the discussion I have in a moment with Ricardo on that. Okay, let's just see if there are any other questions. Okay, Sovereign Eyes says the EFF is behind the farm attacks, I think. Do you agree? And I just want to put a rider on that. On this channel, we don't refer to the EFF as a political party. We refer to them as the terrorist arm of the ANC. That's how we now recognize the EFF. But just to that question, what do you think?
Look, I at this stage, what I see here is obviously they've made quite a lot of statements that one could infer that is encouraging this or part of it, etc. There's not a lot of information publicly to say exactly what's their involvement, are they directly involved or not. But what I can say is that there is something strategic going on behind this, something organized behind it. What exactly is the situation? I'm not sure. But the EFF, at least indirectly, are not being very responsible in their statements, inflammatory, and they have some responsibility to bear in the situation.
Okay, well, I know that Neil de Beer of UIM is taking Julius Malema personally to the Constitutional Court because he takes out an oath when he becomes a member of Parliament not to do anything that would harm the country. And what he's doing is clearly harming the country, and the aim there is to get him thrown out of Parliament. and so he can no longer be a member of Parliament. But that's going to be a very interesting development. Now, Gavin James is. You carry on.
Sorry, if I may, I just want to add as well. Look, when people look at Julius Malema, look, there is some very strange things around him and his behavior that one should look at carefully, and his relationship to the ruling party and the government. I would say, if you want to properly understand him, look at him in the same light as Eugene Terblanche in the past. So Eugene Terblanche had a similar persona. He went around, being inflammatory, being extremist, humiliating the black population, taunting them, and you have similar kind of behavior from Julius Malema now. And as well, Eugene Terblanche seemed to be above the law then. He could do whatever he wants and get away. And you have a similar situation here. So people should look at it in that context. It's definitely fishy. It's definitely strange what is going on there. But I think if you want to understand it better, compare those two. And one would have a better understanding of perhaps what's going on.
Right. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just going through the questions just to see what we got left here. Okay. Gavin James has asked, please ask Ricardo what his views are on the legalization of cannabis and whether he thinks that it could help save our economic situation. That's if the ANC doesn't claim the monopoly.
Yeah, good question. Look, I'm not quite sure on that, in terms of how it will help the economy. I think the ANC will probably legalize it. I think that will probably be the route. My personal stance on it is, look, I'm for personal freedom of people. People need to choose what they want to do. As long as that doesn't harm other people and harm society in general, we have to balance that. So that's my view on the issue.
Right. Now, I just need to issue a quick correction, guys. Now, Marlena corrected me earlier on. We've got a jamming session on the 20th of November, not the 13th, so I do apologize. But most nights at 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, we have a range of topics that we cover live here on Loving Life. Now, let's get back to our focused discussion now. Let's look at the way forward. Now, Bev Sterrett has asked, and a couple of other people asked the same question, and I've just thrown it into this section of the live stream. How does Ricardo see us getting the ANC out of power? He refers to what can be done after, but how do we achieve this in the first place? Now, I guess what we should be looking at is a call for the Ramaphosa regime and all the other political parties in Parliament to resign. What are your thoughts?
100%. Look, I'm working on this at this stage. I'm trying to reach out to other, political leaders and people in society, civil society leaders, for us to design the future, for South Africa, so that we can take this design and present it to the South African people to decide and to see what's the best way to do. So yes, I'm working on that. But in a nutshell, what needs to happen here is we need to have, I personally think there is enough here, and soon I will make the call directly to the president and to Parliament that they should resign. They should do the right thing. It would be in the best interest of the country for them to resign. The people I believe that they've led us into this kind of crisis. His government is corrupt beyond repair. If he's honest that, he's taken poor executive decisions, and those decisions have led us into crisis.
He's just lying.
Exactly. His government is corrupt, and therefore, I don't think he can really say to himself that he can accomplish a rescue and get our country out of this crisis. Secondly, I think there's some evidence here of economic sabotage. I think there's some evidence of harm to our population. For example, the vaccine push. The vaccine push here it's got a lot of question marks around it. It's got question marks on, is there potential collusion and corruption with these pharmaceuticals? It smells like it. It looks like it. And we have a situation where vaccines can be dangerous. And these vaccines have been pushed without the normal checks. You are calling for the entire country to take them. This sounds harmful decisions and approach that you are taking to the country. And then, of course, with the wearing of the face masks, you are telling people to wear face masks on their mouths and noses. You are not telling them what is the safe, because you must understand, you restrict someone's mouth and nose, they could die. And so it's not a light thing to do. So you don't give proper specifications on what kind of cloth, how the cloth should be, what is the safe way for parents to put it on their children, what happens if you've got asthma, if you can't. None of these other health warnings are given with this. So for me, this is irresponsible, it is dangerous, it is harmful. So this government has become harmful to the country. So for those reasons, they should resign. Parliament as well. Parliament has been unable to stop this regime from taking away people's rights and all of that. So Parliament should resign as well, etc. And so we need to make this call to them, and we need to have an interim government in place because our country has an emergency. So instead of us having a local election next year, we should have an urgent national election to elect a interim government, and that can steer us through this crisis. And if Ramaphosa feels, look, he's been sincere, he hasn't done anything wrong, then at least let's put it to the people. Because of this crisis, put it to the people. Let them re-elect you then, if you feel so strongly about the situation. Now, how do we get to that point? Soon I will come out in the public, hopefully with others as well, and we are going to make this call, and we're going to ask South Africans to sign this petition. Now, the idea is the ANC got 10 million or so votes in the last election. If we can have the petition with more people signing the petition than votes that they got, then we have a legitimate base to stand on, and they will have to listen to our call and resign. And if they don't do so, they will have a legitimacy crisis on their hands. And secondly, of course, we should have an interim government, and this interim government should be elected by the people. As I say, I propose that next year's election should be an election for the interim government, rather. Right. And the interim government should fix our crime problem, fix our economic problem urgently, and we should revisit our constitution also during this interim period to ensure that we can never have a situation where a government could be this corrupt and this harmful to the population.
Now, I just want to make a point here. Don't you think where they got it wrong in 1994 is that pre-1994 you had career politicians who were ministers in different portfolios, and they knew exactly what they were doing, okay? Because they'd had years and years and years going through the ranks in politics and learning the ropes. Now, what happened after 1994 when the ANC came in was you literally had ANC members or members of parliament who previously had been terrorists. They'd been out there, causing trouble and fighting in the bush, and they didn't have an idea how to run a portfolio like, let's say, health. They wouldn't have had a clue. And here they were put in charge of these portfolios. And it's like putting a welder, if somebody who's got no welding experience, giving him a welder and telling him to go and weld stuff together. He probably wouldn't wear the glasses because you wouldn't realize that he needs to, and then you'd go blind. You've got a complete breakdown here in logic in putting people into these ministerial positions where they have absolutely no clue what they're doing and they're learning on the run. Wouldn't it be better if what you're saying happens, that in that transition government, the people who actually have the portfolios are people who actually know what they're doing? Because otherwise you're just going to go down the same track.
I would agree. No, definitely. That's part of the idea. You have to make sure in this interim period, and even going forward, you have to make sure that the people who are in government know exactly what they are doing. They do so in the best interest of the people. But that's not enough. And that's why I'm saying we need to have the reform of our constitution. There needs to be also certain decisions that are always being made in the public. So if there are certain decisions that we say, look, these kind of decisions should be taken to a referendum or a public vote, etc. This will help things along as well in terms of checks and balances. And of course, if we make sure that the president is elected directly, parliament is elected separately and also directly, that our judiciary is appointed directly by the people as well, this will all ensure that we have a better functioning system.
Right.
So we can't put all our reliance on that we have good quality leaders, whether they know what they're doing or not, because you can have someone who knows what they're doing, who have the technical qualifications, but they're just corrupt, or eventually those with money get to them and corrupt them. So we have to ensure that not all our hopes rest on this messiah kind of leadership, but we have a good, well-functioning system.
I have to tell you, this is completely off track, but it just came into my head when you talked about corruption. The way Zondo cross-examined Dudu Myeni, or it was actually Advocate Hofmeyr who actually cross-examined Dudu Myeni, who used to be the chair of the South African Airways, which completely collapsed under her chairpersonship, if I can put it that way. She refused to answer I think she answered probably one or two questions, but didn't actually answer the question. She sort of made slights about the advocate who was asking the questions. But all the other questions, she said, I'm not going to answer that question because I might put myself in harm's way or put myself in trouble. And Zondo, who had the power to say to her, look, you have to answer that question, at no time did he say, look, you have to answer that question. What's going on with the Zondo Commission?
Look, I hope it's not the normal situation that there is just a whitewash, that is just a distraction, and that is just a pretending that something has happened while it's not happening. I hope that's not the case here. But there's a lot of indication that that might be the case. Or that it might be used as to get rid of certain political opponents, etc. But I've seen some of those answers of Dudu Myeni, and you must understand, some of it reminded me of, I think I saw a similar thing happening in America when they had some of the mobsters on trial, and they would answer no comment on every question. I think they even asked the guy, "What's your name?" and he said no comment. So it looks similar to that, to be honest.
Right. Okay, now I've got a couple more questions, but we'll get to those in a second, just in conclusion for tonight's live stream. Now, just getting back to the way forward. Now, obviously, one of the critical areas is the need to unite in this call as South Africans, irrespective of political party or political ideologies or disposition. The country needs to be saved from both internal and external threats. Now, what are your comments related to that?
100%. And that's why I'm saying is that this call, or ideally speaking, this interim government should be beyond party politics. We should have a situation where we reach out to as many people as possible to come together. So even when we contest for this, hopefully, for this interim election next year, it should be beyond party politics. People should not contest as part of their political party, and people should explain exactly how are they going to unite the country and get us out of the crisis. Look, this is a crisis, and a crisis itself could be the means of uniting this country. But the people have to understand we are all experiencing this crisis. We are up against a very, very powerful opponent, an enemy. But this enemy is only powerful if we are divided. If we are united, then we are actually more powerful than the enemy. So yes, the interim government shouldn't be an ANC government or a Republican Party government or anything. It should be an interim government in the interest of the people beyond. And number two, the interim government should operate on direct democracy. So the interim government, there shouldn't be parliament in the interim period because we wouldn't have a complete constitution. We have to revisit the constitution. So in this interim period, one of the checks would be policy will have to revert back to the people. So we'll have to get the IEC involved here, and we'll have to have an interim government that is going to be very skilled in simplifying policy and putting it to the people for referendum. so that we can govern in that manner.
Right. Okay. Now I've got
So
I've got two final questions from the side chat. DJ Mexa says, what are the advantages and disadvantages of this COVID-19 app? Is it a right thing to have, or is it just a trap?
Look, personally, I would not recommend it because I think it's too much. It's surveillance. This is communism.
Yeah.
This is surveillance on people. I don't think like I say to you, our president is telling people to put face masks on their face that could potentially be harmful, and he is not giving them any directions to say what kind of cloth or anything, or to say how to make sure it is safe on your children, or when you are jogging and you're not breathing well. None of these directions are given. So therefore, and this face mask could kill people if it's not worn properly or all of that.
Yeah.
So therefore, I would take everything else he says with a pinch of salt. So I would say to South Africans, please consider this carefully. And I think they're not at this stage making it a law or compulsory for you to put this on. So I would not recommend people to do that, to be honest with you.
Right. Well, the World Health Organization themselves say the only time you should wear a face mask is when you feel unwell. If you feel well, you shouldn't actually have a face mask on, because it actually can cause complications with your health. Now, just getting back to the app, I actually had an email yesterday from a young lady who actually teaches the Chinese English over the internet. And she's working through an organization in China, and they gave her an ultimatum by email that she had to download an app onto her phone so that they could monitor whether she missed online classes or all this sort of stuff. That was the excuse. She got a friend of hers who's a very, very smart IT guy to have a look at to see what they would actually capture if you loaded this app onto your phone. And basically what the app did was not just do what they said it was supposed to do. This is this Chinese organization, but it recorded all your phone calls. It recorded every message you sent out. It recorded copied every photo that you took. Everything you did on that phone, that mobile phone, was copied back to their database. Quite extraordinary. And there was absolutely no reference to that at all when they said you need to download this app. It was made to be, we want to check to see if you actually attend, holding these classes. So apps are very, very dangerous things, and I have very few apps on my phone, believe me. Okay, now I've got okay, Forest Man says, does Ricardo foresee a civil war in South Africa?
I hope not, but that it's quite possible. Look, if you have a situation that we're having now with so much fear going around, panic, uncertainty. I mean, I just heard a very sad situation, I think in the last week or so, where a matriculant just before the exam committed suicide. And it saddened me a lot, because that's indicative of the situation in the country. A lot of hopelessness, desperation.
Yeah.
So in that situation, it's very, very possible. The efforts that I'm trying to do now is to prevent that. And as a nation, we should try our best to prevent that and find other means to relieve this pressure. But it's quite possible.
Right. Now, I just want to address one comment in the side chat. It's from Mike Simpson, who says, at Loving Life, just got a reply from that Debbie White saying that any inquiry must go to the editor. Now, Debbie White brought out an article following the Anchor video, which I talked about, which was the one that appeared in the Sun newspaper yesterday, or the day before yesterday, I've forgotten when. But basically that article, well, I think we've talked about it already in this live stream, but basically the article completely misrepresented what happened at Brackenfell High School. And she called the whites thugs in that article. So that's good to hear, Mike, that at least you got your email. That's something, even though they probably won't do anything about it. Now, the final question I've got for you here is from Mervyn Solomon. And he says, what if Ramaphosa refuses to resign? What happens then?
Look, I think we shouldn't look too far ahead. I think we should take one step at a time. I think he would. I think if I read his personality correct, if there's millions of South Africans that stand up and speak up, I think he will back off. The taxi industry said to him, "We're loading full passengers, and Mr. President, we don't care." And what did he do? He backed off. I don't know if you guys remember where when Zuma didn't want to resign, he was Mr. Negotiations and all of that, but he couldn't convince him. We're dealing here with a president in office that the reason why he's the chosen man of the New World Order is because he backs off. So I think let all stand up. Let's put our hands together. And if we can get to 10 million people or so on a petition, I think he will back off.
Right. Okay. I just want to address the people watching right now. We've got about 650 people watching right now, which is a good number. And please remember to subscribe to be kept informed. To subscribe to the Loving Life channel. We have live streams most nights at 8 p.m. And I've really enjoyed our discussion again, Ricardo. You know, as so many people have said in the side chat, you know, you obviously know what you're talking about, and they're very, very impressed and have enjoyed listening to what you have to say. What I'd like to do in closing off this live stream is ask you, firstly, is there anything you think we've missed when it comes to the subject of crises in South Africa?
No, I think it had been quite thorough. I think we've covered everything.
Okay. Then what I'd like you to do is perhaps make a closing statement to the people who are watching now and people who might watch later. Is there anything you'd like to say to people in South Africa and around the world? Because we have quite a few people from around the world who follow the channel as well.
Yeah. Now, I just want to say, firstly, thank you for everyone that has been listening. And I want to say, look, we are going through very, very, very tough times here. And there are people in the world who have plans for us. They want to do certain things to us. They want to dominate us, etc. But we are also entities. We are agents. We can also resist them. And this is a time in our lives now that we have to act. We must not be on the sidelines. We must let our voices be heard. This is exactly the thing that they fear. So try to build your courage. You can do it. Don't stand idle. Put your hand to other people's hands and resist. They are trying to win. They are trying to dominate us, but they haven't done it as yet. And there's people like myself who are still fighting. So please fight along with us, and we will overcome. And South Africa, we are a very important part in the world. I think we have a big opportunity for us to turn things around and to be an example to the world. We can do it. We are a microcosm of the world, and we have all the ingredients to make this a success. But people have to understand there is no tomorrow unless we fight for it today.
Right. Now, just in closing, your website is republicans.org.za.
Definitely, Scott. Thank you.
Okay, republicans.org.za if you want to go and check out Ricardo's party called the Republicans, and you know, have a look and maybe even contact Ricardo if you want to join his party. All right, guys, look, I'm going to wrap up this live stream. We've been going for 2 hours, and it's been really, really interesting and informative. And Ricardo, once again, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure having you on the Loving Life live streams. I'm going to wrap up now. I just want to say thank you to the moderators. As always, you do a fantastic job. We hit well over 700 concurrent viewers at one stage on the channel, which is a good number. And the moderators do fantastic work in checking out what people say and deleting comments if they go, if they're not acceptable. So keep up the great work, moderators, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Most nights, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, we have a live stream on a variety of subjects. I mean, this week we've covered just about everything, but we have some great guests like Ricardo. So with that, I'm going to say, please take care, everybody, and I'm going to wrap up this live stream. And once again, thank you, Ricardo.
Thank you very much, and good night.
And finally, guys, look, I'll leave the side chat open for a couple of minutes so you can say your goodbyes. I'll leave it open for about 5 minutes. All right, guys, take care, and please remember to subscribe to Loving Life to be kept informed, and hit that like button. Bye for now.